Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of UX branch in this amazing internship. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. And today we'll be talking about a bit more of a topic compared to what we have been doing so far. So generally, I know you guys have been working hard. You have been posting your capstones. I was seeing the progress on the LinkedIn. I was seeing the submissions. I want to say good job. It was a lot of work from what I've seen, and I'm pretty sure you had your hands full across all the weeks so far. So now, while we are in the middle of the process of actually designing and making decisions in our capstones, I wanted to hold a session regarding a very specific matter, and that matter would actually be the dark tightrope pattern. Actually, the dark pattern tightrope. Just wanted to give you a quick glance of what this represents, what it is, and how to actually behave and do in certain situations that will possibly appear in your daily work. So what's the catch? What is actually the dark pattern and how it appears? You probably heard already about the dark pattern. When starting UX, it's a very famous term. It represents something that is not the best solution for our users, but at the same time, it might possibly bring a revenue or conversion to the business, but at the same time, at the cost of user experience. So that's the reason why it's called the dark pattern. And today we will be discussing the business goals versus the UX goals, and where do these two actually conflict and clash when we have this thing going on. So I will quickly switch to another screen. So in today's agenda, what we are going to cover is the following. So the first scenario would be like the scenario that trips up every new designer out there. Generally, this is something that you will run into eventually, like everybody does. And it's just a matter of resolving how and why, not just like applying everything you get. The next would be defining our terms. What are the UX goals and what are the business goals when the project starts? Then I'm going to give you guys an example of a framework for like spotting and discovering those dark patterns that appear. Then we will go through some real case studies, like the popular companies that actually use these and maybe they are still using nowadays. And then, of course, the companies who don't use these and they have great response from the users and from the conversion point. And then we will discuss how this affects your capstone and how you can use the session to test it out on your project. But we will get to that eventually in this session. So let's start. I'm going to ask you to picture this. So let's say a project manager comes up to you and says the following. You should make the trial expiration model feel urgent. Make the cancel hard to find. Make a specific CTA the big button. It can directly clash with your UX planning, with your UX knowledge, and it might cause problems for the users from an UX perspective. Generally, like PMs can come up to you and request these things. Why? Well, because clients specifically ask them to. And then you are stuck in a bit of decision making, whether or not is this right or wrong. It could be right, it could be wrong, but generally every designer out there starts feeling that this is not the right way to convey the message to the users. So what would be the next steps that we take when we are prompted with this task? So generally how we would start. We first of all have two goals. As an UX designer, we have an UX goal. We need to help the users accomplish their daily tasks with the least friction, confusion, or regret. We basically want them to succeed in every action they take without losing too much time, without having frictions, basically generating good user experience. We can measure that success in terms of trust, safety, usability, satisfaction, and then of course retention, because the users will keep coming back to what we already produced as a good UX pattern. Now, on the other hand, we have business goals, which usually go along with the UX goals, but they can unfortunately differentiate. So generally, business goals represent like what keeps the company alive and growing. So we can measure the success in terms of like conversion, retention, revenue, signups. It's a lot of data-driven information, but at the same time, that is what actually brings clients money. So we need to find the middle ground between these two, because these two usually, and I'm going to repeat that one more time, usually go together, but sometimes they can clash. And I'm going to help you guys discover what you should do when these things appear during your projects. So we have three things we can potentially mention when we implement these things. Like generally, the first step would be like the ethical nudge. Like we are all taught, instructed, like it's a golden rule and standard to make the experience good for the users. So we just like present, like let's say with an architecture that helps the users decide faster. They can finish their actions in very quick time, and that would be the first approach when we design things. Then the second model would be persuasive design. Basically, we are using psychology to encourage users to do something, but we are not doing it in a bad way. We are not manipulating, we are not lying to people. We are using facts and proof to make users click or purchase a specific product. Some of the examples here would be social proof, things that appear on hero landing pages, which just conveys the message: here we present the truth and we encourage you to purchase this product, and that would increase the sales of a specific client's products. And then at the last last part, we have the dark pattern. That would be like us using psychology to manipulate or trap or mislead the users to stay, to purchase, to pay stuff that they usually don't want to do. This can help, obviously, some of the businesses grow, but at the same time, it creates a bad reputation in terms of the UX. So how do we handle these things? How do we opt to go with something that works for both ways? A lot of companies nowadays use a very specific dark patterns, and you probably like heard about them. But at the same time, like what we will be trying to do is just to disclose and test out what we ship. Is it a good pattern or is it a dark pattern? So in the following slides, we will get to that. But before we start, analyzing the real examples and actually doing the tests for these, there's a few business metrics that you should, actually know. So the first one would be conversion, is like a specific number of users who complete a certain action, like sign up, purchase, upgrade, onboarding, surveys, form. Generally, businesses use these metrics to measure their success of how many users actually go through their page. You can actually use a couple of softwares which can help you see the user movement, and then you can figure out like how many users click on certain button, how many users finish the flow, how many users finish our onboarding, so you can pinpoint the problems that appear on your page or your product. Then we have retention. It's actually a number of users who come back. Basically, if somebody likes your product, if somebody likes the interaction, how you interact with a certain website or a product, they will certainly come back and do it one more time, because you provide a very good user experience, you provided a very good flow, so they're sure to come back and actually like increase the revenue as well, because retention is all about that. Then we have the revenue. I just mentioned it a second ago. Generally, like how much money does the business make, depending on like a certain period of time or per a single user. That's also a metric you should just keep in mind. And then we have referrals. Like, when you refer something to a friend, I'm going to be like, hey, buddy, I know this website, it's very cool. Or there's this FlyRank internship that's very cool for you guys to learn. And that's generally like how referrals do. And these are some of the metrics that I would recommend just to look up and if you want to explore furthermore, because they are very tight with what we do and what we produce. But then at the same time, we have a few UX metrics that you should also know about. We have a task success rate. Basically, can our users complete their goals? Like some user comes on a website, he wants to buy a product. We do the testing and see, is his task successful? Did he manage to successfully complete the task? If he did, then we just take it as a yes. And we generally use this metric to see how successful users are in completing their tasks on the website. NPS, or Net Promoter Score. Generally, it's very tied to the referral thing, but how would users react? Would they recommend this to a friend? Based on their experience, would they recommend this website or product to a friend, or this general interaction? Or let's go with an application that works too as well. Then we have the customer satisfaction. We just measure like the satisfaction for the interactions, with the users. Are they happy with the interaction on the sign up, on the login, on the checkout, general flow? Are they happy with how they are like behaving on the website? And then we have the trust and / effort. How much friction or confusion or like potential suspicion did the flow create? And these metrics are very good to determine, is our user flow good enough? Do we have positive friction on the website? And are we providing a good user experience for our users? Are they having like the least concerns trying to do certain things? So we mentioned business metrics, we mentioned the UX metrics. I would recommend you guys look these up as well and further explore more, just to get a few more details out of it, because they will be very much repeated during your work overall throughout your career. So now that we have these metrics and we mentioned the goals colliding, when do business and UX goals collide? Let's start with a very happy outcome. Like the sweet spot would be that both of these goals collide. Let's say, for example, we can use a checkout flow. Like fast checkout improves conversion, gets the money to the client, and like simple checkout also makes it very simple for the user to actually shop and get the products in their bag quite fast, and of course get delivered to their doorstep. So that would be the first block that I would call where both business goals and UX goals collide. The second one would be, let's call it costly kindness, where we just focus on the UX generally without keeping too much of the business goals in mind. Now, this can be very tricky. It's great for the users, like we can get a lot of positive feedback from the users claiming that, that the interaction was great, the application is working amazing, but at the same time, unfortunately, maybe it does not bring any revenue to the client, which would be that, at the cost of the client, we went with more of an UX approach. Now, there's the tightrope that we are going to speak about the most today. Business wins, user loses. Like dark pattern, like does this exactly. So we need to be very careful while designing these things. It's not just about what the business needs are. Creating these dark patterns is very frustrating for the users and can potentially not just lead to user issues, it can cost the companies a lot of money. But we will also get to that in a few minutes when we start with the real comparison. And then, of course, there's the case where if we did not manage to get neither the UX goals, neither the business goals, then we have the few pointless models or sites that actually do not do anything. And that is actually the worst case scenario when none of the goals collide, neither the UX, neither the business goals. So for the dark pattern test, we can use the litmus test. Basically, we have 4 steps or 4, let's call them stepping stones to determine, is our pattern a dark one or a friendly one, friendly for the user. Disclosure, reversibility, symmetry, and daylight. I'm going to start with each so I can explain it easier for you guys to understand. So let's say we have designed a specific flow or a specific feature that user needs to complete. First, we ask the question of a disclosure. Does the user understand what he's prompted to do just by looking at the screen? If the answer is yes, then we will continue. But if the answer is no, then we stop and we go back to the basics. We rethink our flow, we rethink our feature. We want them to actually be very informative in terms of displaying information for the users. So basically, we want the users to convey and understand the message when they see the screen. The next part would be reversibility, basically asking us the question, can the user easily undo this action? In some checkouts, like we want to ask ourselves, can the user go back to the shop quickly and not be stuck at the checkout? And that will determine if our checkout flow is good enough or it needs work. After we are done with the disclosure and the reversibility, we do the symmetry. Now, is it easy to exit or cancel as it was easy to enter this specific flow? There's a specific term called the roach motel, and it's a very common dark pattern where for users, it's very easy to jump into checkout or to jump into buying things, but it's very hard to get rid of something you don't want to. I have a few examples later, which we will showcase exactly that. But generally, what I'm recommending is to ask yourself, is it easy to exit out of this feature or action as it was easy to get into? And then the last part would be the daylight. Does this thing survive when we push it out on the website? Does this fit into the goals that we had in mind, the UX goals, the both business goals? If your feature or action completes all 4 of these and passes this test, then you can proceed. But if the answer is no to any of these tests, then we need to go back, and you probably found the dark pattern that is going to appear later and cause problems for everyone. So I'm going to be jumping on now the real case studies and the examples of companies that I'm not going to say caught, but they have been using these dark patterns for a while. I'm going to start with Amazon Prime and the so famous Iliad flow. What's it about? Generally, people sign up using a simple tap button. It requires one click. It takes the little time as much as it can take, and you are in. But to actually cancel, it takes 5 to 6 steps. And internally, they named it the Iliad flow because generally Iliad was very long. You can actually Google this one for more if you need more details. But this is actually the roach motel pattern that I spoke about. It's easy to start the action, but it's very hard to quit it or to cancel it. What they did exactly was you jump into a page, you receive an offer, but you want to cancel. User wants to cancel, but instead he's being offered something. They're trying to upsell more of those products. Then you say, no, I don't want another offer. Let me cancel. Then we have another confirmation page. Then again, I want to cancel, but I'm being led to a survey page. And then after 5 steps, I finally canceled and got rid of a subscription or something that I did not want to be part of. And unfortunately, they had to pay a massive bill and a fee or a fine, which was one of the largest in the history. So for this term, this did not lead to much success in terms of what Amazon did. What was the logic behind this decision? Well, it was very simple, just to protect the subscription revenue. Basically, if they created more steps for the users will be very annoyed by the very slow process of canceling subscription, and they will be like, well, I'm going to cancel it the other day or the other month, and they will just keep the revenue. But they were causing anger for the users, but at the same time keeping the money rolling in. So that's one of the important aspects of the dark pattern. In time, it will not pay off. It might be paying off for some time, but at the same time, it was creating a lot of problems for the users. And then again, why it crossed the line? Well, sign up was one click, but the cancellation was a labyrinth or a maze which you had to go through to actually, cancel and get rid of. We will move into booking. Very famous app for booking your stay at the hotels or some apartments. Generally, what they were doing is they were pressuring people into making fast, rush decisions. Why? Well, they were showcasing information like, booked it like there's just one room left, or this price is like one time only. This offer expires today. You've probably seen this multiple times on every e-commerce page or web shops in general. So this is a good example of how psychology works to get money, but at the same time, it causes pain for the users because they are being rushed to make a decision and book something they maybe are not sure they want to be part of. So generally, what type of pattern would this be? It would be like a false urgency or like fabricated information to make you persuaded to actually do something. The logic behind this decision was, just to increase the conversion, pressuring users into doing something they maybe don't want to do. But I get the business logic, but at the same time, this is a very classic example of a dark pattern. And they received the fine for this one because some countries got the laws where you cannot force user, like manipulate him into doing something by showcasing false information. And every day new laws appear that will unfortunately get fines for these companies. Why it crossed the line? Like the claims, as I said, they were not true, they were not verifiable, and that is not persuasion, it's actually deception. So we don't want to do this, and it's a very good example how such a big company used a very specific dark pattern. Then we have Ticketmaster. I can recount a bunch of times where you were met with a lot of hidden fees that the company or they didn't specifically mention. Like, you get to the end of the checkout and you're like, there's another $20 fee. Where did this jump from? Maybe you spotted it, maybe you did not notice it, but the end goal is the same. You will still pay the fee whether or not you actually wanted to pay it, because you were not informed you were supposed to pay that money. Generally, it's basically hidden cost. It's hiding information from the users. The logic would be of course, getting more money and protecting the conversion, but at the same time, it's people who realize that there are hidden fees, they will ditch the program, they will ditch the action, and you can just lead to losing users. So it would hurt the sales. What happened in the end? Users spotted these hidden fees and they were like, yeah, I'm not going to pay that. They figured it out. So going with this approach, like this deception part over honesty, it did not lead them to a very good end, because you see that on the left screen there's a 16.4 billion in fees collected in just 5 years. Now take that into account. How much money did they pay for the fees and how much their revenue was? It's not very logical, is it? But yeah, it's not just about we can go all day describing these dark patterns. Let's go with one more. This one is probably the most common one, and you are met with this every day. The unsubscribe maze. You accidentally sign up for an email or a mailing system that you get monthly emails for a certain product or something similar, and then you want to cancel the subscription, and then you're prompted with chatbot settings, support, live chat, survey. Basically, they are doing everything they can to prevent you from canceling the subscription. Now you probably get very annoyed at that point that it takes me 6 steps. And this is an example that is not just a single unsubscription thing. It's actually the Roach Motel as well. We can have a few dark patterns combined that produces these things. So it's the same thing. Roach Motel applied to email and subscription, generally. And the logic behind it, not to lose users. Users will get annoyed, they will cancel the canceling process, and they will do it the other day. But some people will forget. That means another month will be paid in subscription fees. So yeah, this happens probably a lot more than it should, and it's a regular day occurrence, unfortunately, for everybody on the internet. Um, we also have a very interesting one that is kind of connected to the unsubscribe one. We have a guilt trips and pre-checked boxes, like a guilt trips. Here's an example. You want to do something or you want to cancel something, and they hit you with the CTA that reads like, "No, I don't want to grow my career." It's a very emotional response. It's invoking you or like guilt tripping for canceling the product or canceling the program, and it's a very bad pattern. Like it's actually shaming you for doing certain actions, and that kind of experience is very bad to find on the website. And one of the famous things, probably most of you guys who already did Figma, but the famous thing about Figma AI, nobody asked us to participate in it. They only asked us to sign out of it. Basically, they used every Figma user and their files to train their AI. Now, you didn't know about this, you were not informed about this, but at the same time, Figma was collecting data while it was free as well, even when it started shipping out the payment, like the monthly payments and stuff. Still, it collected your data, it collected your UIs, it collected your research so they can train their models, and you had no idea about it. When you found out, it was already pre-checked for you. You were already like accepting to share the data. Nobody asked you to share. It was already predetermined, and that's the pre-checked boxes part. And then later, when you checked out, they were like, okay, that's your decision, but they never informed anybody that your work will be used to train AI models. And this is not the case with Figma. This is the case with many other global AI companies. They did these things. They used a lot of information, especially for creating images, generating, also stealing a lot of individual artist data. So unfortunately, this was a common thing, and I'm pretty sure in some time we will have a lot of fees paid for this one. But because AI is globally huge now, this kind of went under the radar. So I spoke a lot about these dark patterns and the bad things that companies do, but now I want to showcase something good where companies actually do like those both UX goals and business goals colliding, so they get an even better result compared to the dark patterns. So we will go into the positive side a little bit, so we can talk about that. Let's go with classic register to buy something. It's a very common thing. Companies ask you to register to their website to actually buy something, and they get the users, they get conversion, they get potential upsales, they will send you emails. But the thing is, you cannot purchase until you register. One simple click or CTA called continue, remove that part or proceed as a guest. And people, of course, they bought the product. They were not met with the wall. They finished the checkout quickly. And they were like, sure, I don't need to register. I don't want to share my information with this company. So I can just buy it as a guest or just continue without registering. So this actually increased the sale in the number you can see on the screens. And, it's a very simple thing to do. You get user-friendly things, you get money up, and you are met with both good UX goals and good business goals. Most of you guys use Slack. Not sure, probably companies do most of the time. Maybe you didn't. But generally, like Slack did the rebuild of their onboarding. They used some diary studies and some prototype testing to simplify the onboarding process for all the new users, because they found a lot of friction and problems when users were trying to onboard onto the Slack. And what was the result? Like the promoter score was +9, and they saved time, they saved a lot of money, they brought more users, and people were saying between each other, they were promoting and saying Slack's onboarding feature is great, you should try using it, compared to other competitors, of course. And this plays a huge value in how the company should keep working, because it brought them users, it brought them money, and it brought them like a very good, significant chunk of promotion. So this is what the sweet spot card is about, what I spoke about, like combining both goals, combining both the business idea and the UX idea, and you get, of course, a positive end. And like we spoke about Booking having a dark pattern, but at the same time they also have a few like good things and good patterns. It would be like when you go to the date picker and you want to choose the date range on when you want to do holiday, or when are some of the hotels empty or not booked. Well, they just simplified the date picker flow. There was no manipulation, just fewer steps and generally clearer states helped like grow up to plus 4% of a conversion lift from a cleaner date picker. So it sounds like it's a little tiny percentage, but for a global scale company like Booking, it results in millions of more like newly added money and saved costs. So this was like, again, a good example of colliding both good user goals. So same company, they used both the dark pattern and the good pattern, but a dark pattern is a choice. It's not a necessity. You just need to put more time into figuring out how to approach and solve the problem better. And this is not an example, but just a general overview of what is going to happen with the companies who continue doing these things, and not just companies, basically designers as well, when they think they can get that dark pattern up and running. Like some of the rules, like click to cancel, was announced in 2024, and then like these rules are being rewritten daily. And we will have regulations, and EU is like going to introduce a lot more of these laws that will prevent companies from using these dark patterns to manipulate, decept, and basically lie to users to get money. So you see the like also in short terms, what would this mean? Like what looks like good growth hacking can be a liability, and in the end you will be met with huge fees and fines to pay if you use and break these laws. And back to what we can do when we are met with this problem. How to say no without saying no. Like, it's not the easiest thing to do. When I was like, 3 years ago, or maybe like, also sometimes recently, it's not easy to say no to a few like requests that higher ups like, request of you. Generally, what would be like the plan is what I put here: how to actually push back the decision without actually being rude or just saying no, because at the end of the day you're the one suggesting the decision, they will go with the decision. But generally, just like ask questions, like name the metric. What like let's say a client or a PM asks you to push something, and you're like, the first thing you should ask, what is the metric we're trying to achieve here? Is it a business goal? Is it a UX goal? Is it what is it supposed to bring to the client? If it leads to a dark pattern, then you can quickly say, this is not the approach I want to do. Then the litmus test that we were like showcasing 15 minutes ago, you can use that. Test it out. Test out the feature that was like suggested to you, and then you can you have arguments to say this is not going to work. It will bring more trouble than good things. Then after you like are done with these two things, you can offer an alternative that fits both the user and the business well. Sure, it might not be the biggest business goal, but at the same time try to meet both ends, so they can clash and collide from both good sides, both good UX metrics and both good business metrics. And then again, back everything by data, not just feeling, like showcase these dark patterns and the fees and fines they were met with, showcase the problems they run into using these dark patterns, and just basically argument your decision as much as you can without saying just abruptly no. And people will listen to you more if you argument these things like properly, not just saying no, but just trying to showcase your way of thinking for these issues. Now, what I would like you guys to do is check your capstones, see how far you came. For those guys who are still like doing their tasks and stuff, don't worry. You can also like go back on this presentation and this YouTube and ask yourself, what is one business metric that your Capstone now serves? Like, is it retention? Is it revenue? Is it signups? Find these in your Capstone and point them out. And then, like, if you ask yourself a question, if you had to choose between a 10% of a conversion bump or a 10% NPS bump, what would you pick? Which business metric would you like more to grow on your Capstone? Because it's very important of like discovering what is the next part of, the project and the Capstone. Where is it going to lead to for the user? Now you can do this in 10 to 15 minutes. It's not a long task. It's just like a conclusion of this today's session. You can do it also alone. If you have a pair, if you want to do it in pairs and share your results or your findings on LinkedIn as well, you can do that as well. Or small groups, there are no restrictions for that. Basically, just identify your Capstone's core business metric. Like we spoke about business metrics today. Identify. It doesn't have to be a single business business metric, but you can find a few of them and just make sure to note them down. Then debate the conversion versus like the NPS trade-off. Debate the business goals versus the UX goals that your Capstone already has. Do they collide? Do they not collide? Do they have more of a good UX things, but they don't meet the business goals? Go back to a few slides of today and actually see, does your Capstone have these things colliding? That would be the sweet spot and the thing to go to. And then, you can share these things with the room, share with with your friend, share with us, share it on LinkedIn, so we can see, like, do your Capstones meet these things? Because it's going to be very important at the end of the projects to see. It's not just going to be pretty UI, pretty things. We need to also have a very specific business model that is going to work. Now, I'm going to do a quick wrap up before we are done with this session. Key takeaways for this session. Now, for those of you who just jumped into the stream or like you were not there the whole time present, UX and business goals are allies. They are usually allies. They are not enemies. But at the same time, this is the reason why we use the litmus test. This is the reason why we verify every step we make so that they don't collide, so that one does not lead to another. Like, we just want them to go along and be present in both ways. So just combining business and UX goals. Now, the second thing I want to point out from this session, the line between persuasion and manipulation is very close. And it can be checked with the litmus test, because as we already spoke about, it's one thing to persuade somebody based on facts and true facts, like something that is an absolute truth. And the second thing is to manipulate somebody into doing something based on deception. So use the litmus test to actually test these things out before you ship a certain feature or an action. And then the last part we spoke about saying no and pushing back the requests for you to design a dark pattern, would be not just like, I don't want to do this. I want to convince you that this is not the best way to go. This is not just like what I think is right to do. This is also business-wise, we shouldn't do this. Like, not just UX-wise and moral-wise, this is not a good business idea. And then at the end, I want to share some of the resources that you can, guys, if you think this session was good and you want to find out more about dark patterns and what they represent, what examples, because there's a bazillion examples of dark patterns being used nowadays on every website. You can check out deceptive.design. They have a lot of libraries showcasing these dark patterns. And they have a very cool section called Hall of Shame for the biggest companies who do these dark patterns every day, and they are still using them. So give it a look. You might find something interesting which you can share with your friends. But I think it's a very nice site to visit. You can type in Deceived by Design. It's a report based on manipulative design. It mentions a lot of the companies that use these practices. and what we should not do when we design these things. You can also check out the government page. They have case files like Amazon, Ticketmaster, if you are interested in the amount of fines these guys paid for promoting these dark patterns. And of course, you can just type in the famous staying at the Roche Motel pattern to discover more full analysis of it, what it represents, how it appears through various features and actions. But yeah, these are some of the resources I could suggest to you guys to have a look if you're interested in discovering more on this thread. And yeah, that would be it for this session. It was a bit different compared to the usual workflow we do in the UX, the processes, designs, interfaces, workflows. But this was something I wanted to talk about because we are in the middle of the internship, and you guys, from what I've seen, already started building a lot of good things. So now it's the perfect time to just to give you a glimpse of what you should think about when you design. There's this, I know you guys are doing a lot of work manually. There's a lot of labor involved in it. It takes time to design something, not just using AI, but you have to manually learn how to design specific frames or pages. But at the same time, we need to have and keep in mind what we are building, what we are doing, and what our capstone will represent at the end, because only then the client can be happy. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's session. You can find the video, for those of you who missed the session, on our YouTube channel. And yeah, until next time, I will be seeing you again very soon, and looking forward to reviewing some of the capstones that you guys have built. I will give you a notification on that kind of a stream. It's going to happen soon, so stay tuned. Check out the portal, check out LinkedIn, and as always, you will be notified on the Gmail, on the mail, for all the latest news and updates. So thank you so much for joining me today. Have a good rest of the day, guys, and take care. See you soon.